Tayatuwashte, Midakyafi, Dayaya Hipi. My name is Tierra Baird, and I'm the Environmental Restoration Manager.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Louisa, and I'm the Director of Programs. Wakan Tipio Wayangapi is excited to welcome you all to our Gifts of a ƞkasań webinar and host this evening's event.
And so tonight we'll be highlighting the bald eagle. Our speakers are Jim Red Eagle and Summer Dumarce-Lara. Pidame, thank you all for joining us this evening.
So before we begin, we just wanted to let you all know that you can turn on your live captions. You can enable those, and I'll have the live captions at the bottom of your screen. This evening's webinar is 1 hour, and we have 2 speakers. So each speaker will be speaking at one after the other, and then we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. And we can't hear or see you, but we encourage you to engage in our Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can ask any questions you want throughout the webinar, and we will answer all of those questions at the very end, and we'll hope to get to all of those. We also have a survey for you all at the end to gather your feedback. These surveys are really important to us to know what we're doing well, what we could improve, and we'll also have a raffle for those who participate. So if you stick on for those last 5 minutes of tonight's event, we will be raffling off a few items. And we'll plug in the survey link towards the end as well. So again, if you do have any questions, plug them into the Q&A. And if we don't get to some of your questions at the end, you can always email us at info@wakantp.org.
All right, and we shall get started. So our first speaker is Jim Red Eagle. Jim is Nakota, Dakota, and Lakota from Cega'Kin, Nakota, Tokiya, Oyate, Sinta, Luta, Saskatchewan. He resides in the Black Hills of South Dakota with his family, and he believes it is always an honor to share our traditional stories of our ancestors, and by doing this, we pass it on to the next generation. Tonight, he'll be sharing 2 stories with us and some traditional uses of eagle feathers. And so the act of storytelling ensures that they will be passed on to future generations is of utmost importance while we are here. And so I will pass it on to Jim.
Good evening, Jim Regal Macha. Damakota, Namakota, Malakota. I'm Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota. And it's an honor to be here tonight to speak and share with the knowledge I picked up in my lifetime. My Dakota name is Shayapi, means to paint yourself red, Shayapi. And my Nakota name is Wamnina Dabana. In Nakota, it's Wambli Watakape. And it actually belonged to, I had a grandpa who was Oglala Lakota. He was up in Canada, and he came down. He was with Sitting Bull, and he came down, and he was going to go back down to Pine Ridge, and he stopped in Montana. I guess fell in love with my grandma and stayed, never made it back, but it's his father's name I carry is Charging Eagle is my name. And anyways, I'm going to share a couple old stories. The first one I'm going to talk about the meaning of ƞkasań. What that refers to is the bald eagle, specifically. Ƞka, like both ends. Sań means white or whitish in color, or even you can use that for gray. Sań. So ƞkasań, that's what it means. Whitish on both ends. But our our word for eagles, there's different kinds of eagles, and there's different names for them depending upon their age. The golden eagle, Wombly, you know, certain eagles, Wombly Gleshka. I live in South Dakota, and so I kind of lean more towards the Lakota side. You know, when I was young, that's where uh, I went for knowledge, and I married among them. We have a story in the Black Hills that you may have heard about the Red Road of creation, Luta. We call it also the uh, Ochanku Ianka, the Red Road or the Red Race of creation. This happened a long time ago in the Black Hills. In the beginning, when creation was completed, there was a race among all in creation to around the Black Hills four times. And it started at a place called Bear Butte near the town of Sturgis. It started, it ended. And they say before the race began, the eagle fought the wolf. And they fought the wolf, and he killed the wolf, and he took his medicine, and he took the wolf's songs. And the eagle said, whoever wins the race, he'll give those gifts to them. Whoever in creation will receive those gifts from the eagle. So before the race began, the magpie and the buffalo had an agreement to help each other. And the magpie stepped forward and said, I'll represent mankind. So as they went around, the magpie, he rode on the back of the buffalo, they said. And as they got into the finish line, he flew across and won first on behalf of mankind. And they say that because of that, the race was to determine who would be intellectually above all in creation. But I always say I don't know about that. Man is sometimes not very smart intellectually. We do foolish things. Anyways, the eagle gave the wolf medicines and the songs to mankind. He also taught the mankind how to hunt, how to survive in battle. And because of that, we honor the eagle, and we wear and adorn each other with eagle feathers or eagle plumes. Now, some of you may have seen I wouldn't know how to really word this, but there's kind of I guess an analogy of an eagle flying, and a crow's on his back, and the crow is pecking at the eagle, and the eagle doesn't do anything. He doesn't fight the crow, but the eagle does. He flies higher and higher. He flies way up above into the ozone layer, and there the crow cannot breathe, so the crow falls off. And that's one of the gifts that the eagle was given in the beginning of creation, to fly high up above into the ozone, they call it, or what we call traditionally is Ska. Ska is one of the first four creations, the blue dome above the earth, but scientists call it the ozone layer. That's one way to say the ozone layer, Ska. So, and that's the eagle's ability to to ascend that high. And we say, ascend high towards the Creator. So, because it can go high, it possesses a trait called don. Don is like a sacredness that the eagle has. Tokiya and Tokiya, which is a sacredness that you can see, and there's a sacredness that the eagle possesses that cannot be seen. The spiritual power of the eagle. So those are two stories that we were told that the eagle can fly up that high. So we honor the eagle feather by wearing them. Usually a feather goes to a man and the plume goes to the woman. And we have a ceremony for that. But the eagle, like the buffalo, is part of all of our ceremonies in some way. In Sundance, there's a song about, Wambly Gleshka, the spotted eagle is coming. When we bury somebody in a traditional way, we'll call the eagle. Not everybody does this, but how I was taught if I was to bury somebody at the grave, I would use the eagle bone whistle, and I would blow it in the 4 directions, and I would call out their name, the person's name, as I face each direction. And we have songs about that. Wambly ikikjuo, the eagle to come back. We believe because the eagle, when you call the eagle like that, the eagle will come and they'll take your relative's spirit up above towards to the beginning of their journey to the spirit world. So that's one way too, using that eagle. And we also have a traditional wedding ceremony where it's called the eagle ceremony. I first witnessed this in the 1970s. Somebody got married, I won't say who, with the pipe. And the man conducting it, the spiritual leader at that time, they invited me to be the witness. So I was there at the Sundance when that couple was getting married. And later he told me we call that the eagle ceremony, because the eagle, it takes its time selecting its mate. And once it selects its mate, it will never select another mate. Even with if the other mate dies, it'll stay close and it will not get another partner. So just as another example, we have stories where, people were given protection. They went off to war, and one of their protections was the eagle feather, and they kept the eagle feather inside their shirt, and it was given to them as a wotawe, a protection in war. So that was another way to use it. And we get Indian names, we're adorned with feathers. Like I said, a feather for a male, a plume. Plume, a wambalisa, is one way to say a plume. And with the plume, it represents the Creator's life breath, the plume. And we give it to women because women breathe life into this world. And that's the gift, the sacred gift that women have. So the plume belongs to them. I was told too that the plume is above all feathers because of that. So you can have a headdress full of black and white tail feathers or whatever tail feathers, you used to make one, and that one plume will be above all of them because it's sacred. So, yeah, the concept of ton is kind of really deep if I go into it and break it down. But that's the sacredness that the eagle possesses. And in Minnesota and area, there's more bald eagles, and where I live on the plains is more golden eagles, and bald eagles, ƞkasań, are less seen, not as frequently seen as the golden eagle. So we are because of what the eagle did for us, we honor it. And the eagle feather, like I said, it possesses the shichumpi, which is the essence of the eagle. Just like if you have a buffalo skull, and the buffalo skull is just bones. But when you put the horns back on the skull, then they say that the buffalo spirit is there. With us, when we have the eagle feather, then they say the eagle feather is with us. And I asked long ago when I first received an eagle, how do you take care of it? And they told me to smudge it with cedar. Cedar is for spirits, and they say eagles love the scent of spirits. I mean the scent of cedar, and its spirit will be satisfied. And so we use cedar when you first get it, eagle feather, to smudge it and bless it. So those are some of the things that I was told. We have a song. It's Wiaka Wakamoniye Lako Wichokon Owicha Owapa Heltipalo. And what that means is through the eagle feather we will live and have life, the people. And that addresses why we honor the eagle feather today. And and my name was given to me. My name, Charging Eagle, is because my grandpa charged the enemy when it was coming towards us. He staked himself out, and he was ready to die for our people. And the second time I was almost killed in the line of duty when I went home. My grandparents gave me that name and passed it on to me. So I earned my name. My grandpa, his name was Red Eagle, which is a sacred. Red is a sacred color, but it's actually Wamji Duta. It's a Dakota name I carried, Wamji Duta, and Duta is kind of a scarlet color. Well, another story. I probably have a little bit of time here. Is when that Ƞkasań Sawi, the white buffalo cap woman, came and brought us the sacred chanupa. They said as she left, she turned into 7. 7 relatives in creation. And the first relative was a red eagle. So just some of the old stories that I was told, and why we honored the eagle. So I don't know if I used the amount of time I had. So
You sure did. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
you're
Appreciate,
welcome.
yes. Thank you for so much for sharing about yourself and bringing a lot of the Dakota language into tonight's webinar as well. Um, we're so grateful for folks for sharing all of their knowledge at these webinars, and we thank you for sharing your night with us.
Yeah, to put on an eagle feather is wachihi, to wear eagle feathers. And Dakotas used to wear a braid, peichokan, in the middle of their hair, and that's where they would tie that eagle feather. We put them on medicine wheels when we give them, and what that represents is that we belong to the Wakiya Oyate, the Thunder Nation, to wear an eagle feather with a medicine wheel. It's a can't remember how to say it. There's a different way to say it. Pegna oshkatapi is when the medicine wheel and a feather or plume is tied to it. Different side, a man, you wear it on the right side, and a woman on the heart side. So that's.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your service too. I didn't know, so thank you so much. Well, we're so thankful for Jim being here, and we're really excited now to also introduce you to our next speaker. We have Summer Dumarce-Lara joining us this evening. She is a citizen of the Sisseton-Wahpeton Oyate. She's an Indigenous woman committed to bringing our voices to the table. She's also a doctorate of veterinary medicine student with previous education in wildlife and conservation biology, and with a master's of biomedical sciences. She is known for her commitment to diversity and inclusion in STEM fields through community-oriented projects, and is involved in multiple organizations on campus that focus on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. As Summer is incredibly passionate about accessible veterinary care for underserved communities and letting Indigenous voices lead the way when working with Indigenous communities. When not involved in and traveling for various veterinary projects, she is spending time in learning and teaching Dakota language. One day she hopes to have her own practice that has language and Dakota built into the heart of it. So I'm so excited to introduce her and turn it over to her for this evening.
Cool. Piramaya Louisa. Hamarakiapi. My name is Summer. My Dakota name is Wamanicha Tonkeyapiwi, which is the animals take her as sister woman. My Thibodeau, or my older brother, gave that name to me. And I think that is a really like strong reflection of the work that I do. And I am excited to be sharing some of that work with you guys today. It's been a hot second since I've done some of this though, but I still try to keep kind of that relationship with all of our kin like at the forefront. Right now, as a veterinary student, I'm actually doing a bit more work with like our domesticated animals, dogs, cats, horses, cattle. But I do still have like wildlife and conservation kind of like at the heart for me, since that's kind of what my education was before going to vet school. And so I do like to work also with our raptors or eagles and bison as well. So to start off with, I think if I can go to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna try to, this is kind of all gonna be pretty big picture type of stuff. Just because I think there's so much to learn about eagles, the ƞkasań. that it's hard to kind of fit it into 15, 20 minutes, right? So I'm going to try to hit some of these bigger points that I think people might be interested in. And so this first one is broadly talking about conservation. And I think bald eagles have a really great story. I think they're such a success story of what conservation looks like for our animal relatives, like the eagle. And I think honestly, their story kind of reflects Indigenous people's history as well. Same with bison, but I think that they are just like a story of like resiliency and what it means to be in like healthy communities and how that supports our communities. And that's kind of how I picture their conservation story, right? And so I'm sure a lot of people are aware that in the 20th century, so early 1900s, right? The bald eagle was experiencing a severe decline in their population, and a big part of this was due to DDT exposure, habitat loss, and just overall persecution. Um, DDT now is thankfully banned, but if you're not familiar with what DDT is or was, it would cause eggshell thinning, which, as you can imagine, is pretty uh, like just traumatic, right, for these birds because it would mean that these mating pairs would sit on their eggs and they don't really lay that many eggs at once, like maybe one, two, three, and they would actually break the eggs just because of that eggshell thinning. And so that also was a huge contribution to their decline in population. However, in 1972, there was a DDT ban, and the bald eagle came underneath the U.S. Endangered Species Act, and that's when we kind of started to see these increases in their population numbers. And luckily, in 2007, the bald eagle was removed from the U.S. Endangered Species list, and it's kind of just, I think, like this big like at least like in the wildlife world, it's such a recovery like success story. And actually today I was talking with somebody who used to live in Winona, and she was telling me how, because we were talking about eagles. I can't remember I think she mentioned Winona, and I was like, oh, you guys have like an eagle like conservatory or something like that over there, don't you? And she was like, yeah. She's like, I'm still from the time where when I was younger, it was really rare to see an eagle. And she's like, but now today, like to see them everywhere is just amazing to her. And I think that's so crazy that you can see such a drastic change in just one lifetime, right? Um, and I think seeing them now is just such an indicator of kind of how healthy their environments are becoming. We're still dealing with stuff like habitat loss, right? We're still trying to figure out those kinds of things. But the recovery of eagles is an indicator of like clean water in the area, right? Because they love to be by the water. If you know that, if you're in Minnesota, right, you see them by the river like all the time. Um, so I think overall they're a pretty good, reliable indicator of just like a healthy environment. They also play a really significant role in the ecosystem, because they are a like apex predator. They help keep like our prey populations in check, so they prevent overpopulation of other species. They also have a unique role where they play like a scavenger role, and I think that kind of doesn't always fit with like what we picture as like a majestic eagle because um, nobody really likes thinking about an eagle eating like dead carcasses, right? But they do, and that's really important to the health of our ecosystems because it's helping to clean up our environment, and it's helping to prevent any sort of diseases. Um, so overall, like I just think that their conservation picture has been just a really great like success story. If you look at this kind of graph, so you can see back in 1963, they only had about this is 417. I thought it was like 413, but only had that many breeding pairs here in the in the lower 48, right? And then you go back, this one only goes to 98, but 5,700, right? And I want to say when I was looking, kind of like just trying to get my numbers straight and everything like that, by 2019, there is about 71,000 breeding pairs. So can you imagine that? Like in just what is that, like 50 some years, right? Yeah, 50 some years, going from 400 breeding pairs to greater at this point now in 2026. I'm sure it's greater than 71,000, right? Um, that's just huge. That's so huge. And I really think that reflects Indigenous people and like their commitment to like resiliency and our commitment to resiliency, right? And a lot of this success story came from partnerships between like the federal government, between just different like agencies, wildlife agencies, conservation organizations, and also tribes. Tribes play a really huge role in this, and that's actually something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But if we go to the next slide, current threats. And so these are kind of things that are still, there's tons of things actually, but the main things that I was thinking about for kind of big picture current threats of our eagle populations today, I think of HPAI, which is highly pathogenic avian influenza, and lead poisoning or lead toxicosis. Um, if you're not familiar with lead toxicosis, so lead, I hopefully, like when I think about lead toxicosis, I think about kind of the impact that it could have on people too, right? So there's that time frame where we all were and are still like worried about lead paint, right? Because we know it can cause neurologic symptoms, and can diminish our health in people. And the same applies to our birds too. And so I mentioned earlier that eagles do tend to eat carrion, and they also eat fish. And when you think about our practices as indigenous people who might be like having a subsistence lifestyle, we're hunting, we're fishing, all those things. If we want to be a good relative, we have to think also about the impacts of those that we might not intend to impact. And so I think about when we go hunting, a lot, the most commonly used thing are lead bullets, right? And when you go hunting and you're skinning and you're gutting a carcass, you're leaving behind oftentimes those lead fragments, which can be really detrimental to these birds that are going to come and feast on it, right? And so we don't mean to, right? But it's something that does happen, and I think it's something to think about. And the same thing with lead weights with fishing. A fish swallows it, gets away with it, whatever. Bald eagle comes in because they love fish and they swoop it on up, and then they also eat it that way too. Um, and it's been shown that lead poisoning can reduce our overall eagle population growth by about 4%. And according to this one resource that I was looking at earlier, almost half of our bald and golden eagles exhibit chronic lead exposure. And that's really scary because we do have just this really great success story of them, and yet there are still these threats that we have to think about. And I think that's just something we have to kind of consider, with our own styles, types of lifestyles. Um, and so that's kind of the one thing that I think of. There's a few other things we can think about, like habitat disturbance is a current threat, vehicle collisions, but then the other big one right now is going to be avian influenza. And that's something that I kind of wanted to share a story about. So my partner's mother is our tribe's fisheries and wildlife director. And she was telling me this story of how some people had seen an eagle on a lake. Like I think it was like in the middle of winter or something like that, but they saw it on a lake and it just wasn't doing well. Like it just looked off. Like its head was tilted, it was just sitting there. And so a lot of concerned people called it into her. And she kind of like went and checked it out and everything. And she was like, unfortunately, like I can't do anything because it's state land. So she's like, so let me get a hold of the state. And so she did. And what they said at that time was that due to avian influenza, they were not able to go out and help that bird, which is really sad. And I think it's also it's a fair thing only because of how we know that avian influenza is so detrimental to bird populations, and it's also really detrimental to it's detrimental to like our almost all of our bird populations, right? Our raptors, our songbirds, that kind of thing. But then it's also really detrimental to poultry, which is a big part of the United States economy. Um, and it's a devastating disease. It causes neurologic symptoms, it can cause GI symptoms, it can cause respiratory symptoms. And it's really terrible and it's really severe and it can cause death, like in a lot of these bird populations. And so if that were to be passed on, there's also a zoo, sorry, I forgot something. There's also a zoonotic component to it too. And so then we worry about it getting transmitted to us because we've already seen that it can impact like dairy cattle and it can impact other wildlife as well. So overall, just a really scary disease. So it was fair that I think at that time they were saying we can't really do anything about it when it was relatively new. Um, because they just didn't want to cause any harm to any other populations, right? But my partner's mom was kind of like, I don't really agree with that, only because, not only because, but like as Native people, the eagle is so spiritually important to us. It's so sacred to us that we need to be doing something for these birds. Um, and we need to be able to help them somehow, right? And so she ended up reaching out to the Native American Fish and Wildlife Society and let them know about this. And kind of with her pushing them, what they ended up doing is they created this resource hub here, to kind of come up with these different like policies with the help of Dr. Tolani Francisco, who is an Indigenous veterinarian from I can't remember where exactly she's from, but she's from the Southwest, and she was the director of the Wild Horse and Burro program. Um, but with her help, they created these kind of like policies and guidelines for how can tribes and like state or like federal officials work together to handle these types of situations, because they are so important to us, and we need to be able to have those policies in place so that way we can be more preventative versus like reactive. And so this is a really great resource if that's something that you're interested in. It says information hub for avian influenza prevention and response. There's a lot of really good information there. And so I think it's something that if that's what you're interested in, you should go and check out. So those are kind of the two big current threats that I think about when it comes to eagles. And in response, I think this is where my next slide comes in, is rehabilitation, right? And there's kind of some different thoughts on this, but I've heard, like we need to let nature take its course. We need to just kind of respect that nature has its own path, does its own thing, and that includes sometimes like animals dying for whatever reason, right? And my personal belief is that, things like vehicle collisions are not natural, right? Habitat disturbance is not natural. Like we did that, right? Rodenticide exposure is not natural. We did that. Lead exposure is not natural. We did that, right? And so I think that we have kind of this responsibility to be able to provide care for these animal relatives. And so rehabilitation is a really big thing there. You may have seen like so on my intro slide was a picture of me holding an eagle, and so some other background on me is that yes, my degree was in fisheries and wildlife, but I did a lot of wildlife rehabilitation when I lived during my time in Minneapolis. I used to volunteer at the Wildlife Center, and then I also volunteered at the Gabbert Raptor Center, which is associated with the University of Minnesota. And so being there is able to see a lot of like the behind the scenes work that goes into caring for these animals and what that means, and how can we, and like just learning more about how we provide supportive care or medical care, or even surgical care, truthfully, to these animals, to these birds. And so University of Minnesota, I'm trying to make sure I have the correct number, but in 2025, they actually saw 189 bald eagles, just for various reasons. A lot of them are related to lead. A lot of them are related to like vehicle collisions. I think those are probably the top two. And then just kind of like other miscellaneous things, right? Um, oh, and then also, yeah, in fishing gear entanglement too. Like, make sure you throw away your fishing line. And so those are kind of like the big things that rehabilitation centers take on. And it requires a lot of care behind the scenes. It requires individual feedings, and then it requires group feedings, and then it requires like kind of like strength training for birds, making sure that they're able to, overall, the goal is to make sure that they are able to sustain themselves, right? We want to make sure these birds are independent when they go out. Um, and then these rehabilitation centers also give us a lot of really good information on conservation, um, just because they're contributing to the data, right? They're telling us like, hey, this many birds are affected by this. And so we know for sure that it's happening. And a lot of what they do too is related to public education. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what I have. I think overall, what I was trying to get at with just these three overarching big points. I know I didn't get too much into the nitty-gritty, but like I said, I think that's kind of hard to do. Um, Overall, with these 3 points, I guess I'm trying to show or talk about how like advocacy and like policy, science, like community stewardship, tribal stewardship, um, our values as Indigenous people, like our cultural values, how that can all push forward our how we want to preserve this species, right? Um, I think it's really important this is something I kind of tell a lot of people. And again, being that I'm a veterinary student, this is really important to me, but I think it's really important to remember that these are our animal relatives beyond kind of just what we know them as, I guess, if that makes sense. I think that we need, as Native people, oftentimes we need to take a bit more of an initiative when it comes to taking care of our animal relatives. And so that's kind of just my overall feelings, my overall thought process. But yeah, so thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Summer. I love how you always are, I mean, the knowledge that you have about just the sciences, the ecology. I learned so much about even just like natural versus unnatural causes of things. Like it's not a lot of not something a lot of people think about that actually what we would think is natural is actually unnatural. So you're such a good teacher, all of those scientific terms for all of us folks who don't have that science background. Thank you for explaining those. Well, we now have time for questions. So, Jim, if you want to turn your camera back on too, Tierra and I are going to help answer some of these questions that are coming in through our Zoom attendees. So our first question is probably for you, Jim, or either probably, but I know you were talking about the breakdown of the name ƞkasań. So a lot of language learners were wondering if ƞkasań can be said in all dialects, and if that has the same meaning as Wambri Pasca, or if that is only in some dialects. If you can share anything about the word in different dialects, that would be appreciated. Oh, 1 second. I gotta ask it on to mute. Oh, Jim, I think you have to press the microphone. If you can press that to unmute. Jim, we can't, hold on 1 second. Jim, we can't hear you yet. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I went off. I didn't realize you couldn't hear me. Anyways, there's different names, like, like I said, I don't know about, I think in Nakota, they just lump it all together, and call them Wamini. And, but the Dakota and Lakota, we differentiate. ණkasań is the bald eagle with the white head and white tail. And Wambly is we generally refer to as the golden eagle, but yet it's still is the name for any eagle. I don't know what was that word you said, the other word, I didn't catch it.
Well, I didn't see the diacriticals, so I'm not sure if I have the right emphasis on the word, but Tierra, do you know, based on the top of your head, what word they were trying to translate or trying to type? Oh, you're muted now too.
I don't know. There's different orthography. I'm old school, I learned to read and write and without the diacritical marks and
Yep.
that's used today. I can't even read today's writing.
Everyone's different.
It's hard for me to read. I could read the old way of writing.
Mm. I do see we have another question. This one might be for you, Summer. Someone said, I'm seeing and hearing my eagle neighbors mating a lot these days, and I'm curious about the window of mating time. Do they lay eggs continuously throughout the spring, or when do eggs usually hatch in our area, the Twin Cities area?
That's a really good question. I think at least in our area, or I'm in Wisconsin right now, so yeah, I'm still in the area. It's normally around this time, so that sounds about right that you'd be hearing them. I want to say it's usually like December through like February, March-ish. Um, I don't know. I'm in Wisconsin right now, and actually it's rather like warm here, and so that's also something to consider is that as our world's temperature is changing, I have a feeling that their mating habits are probably going to be changing too. Um, but yeah, so it's usually around this time. Yeah, from whatever, I can't even remember what I just said, December to like February, March-ish. But they'll start kind of maybe like building their nest a little bit earlier than that and like mating a little bit earlier than that. Um, and then kind of midwinter-ish is when everything peaks. Um, and then yeah, February-ish is when they're going to start laying their eggs. Um, I guess we are technically in the very beginning of March, so we're still in that time frame. So that makes sense. I'm not really actually sure how long it takes for them to hatch. Um, that's not something I personally ever truly worked with just because I was working with the adults a lot. But yeah. And then I think that word, just to go back to the other question, the word that they were asking about was Wambati Pasca. I think they're saying like Wambati, like eagle, and Pasca, like whitehead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that could be a different way, you know. Language varies too by geography, even among the different dialects, you know. And a way of saying something might be specific to a certain Tioshpaye or Oshpaye, you know, community. And so that's probably why they heard that word referring to the eagle's white head, Pascha. Pa is head and ska is white. And like I said, sang is a whitish color. It's still white, but it's not. Uh, we refer to that color too for the white buffalo calf woman. Petichula ha, petit, petehinchula ska or sa we. So it's interchangeable ska or pa or sa.
Thank you both for answering those questions. We do have one more, two more, but so next question that we have, I think you both can answer it. But why are bald eagles less common on the Great Plains than golden eagles? And does that have something to do with diet? And then the last question is, or not the last question, but do both eagles have the same significance in the cultures of the Oceti Sakowin?
What was
So
that
my
last part?
oh, go on.
The last part was, do both eagles, the golden eagles and bald eagles, have the same significance in the cultures of the Oceti Sakowin?
Oh, you want to go first?
Yeah, I figured I was gonna answer maybe like the first question. So, when I think of bald eagles, I think of them really enjoying water, and so that's why Minnesota has one of the like greatest populations of the bald eagle is because of just how much water we have. The second state would probably be Alaska. And so bald eagles, they really love water. They really love trees. They need them for their big nests. And they love water because they love fish. That's probably their favorite food, right? Fish. So it does in part have to do with their diet and also just their overall lifestyle. Golden eagles, I tend to think of more as kind of like wide open, like they like the plains for sure, but then also kind of like mountainy terrain. When I'm in Colorado, sometimes I see them out there. And so I think that's just kind of how they've like separately evolved. So that's what comes to mind. I think like yeah, you'll still see some bald eagles out in like in the Dakotas and the plains and stuff like that, but normally it's gonna be towards the lakes. If you can find them, they're gonna be closer to the lakes.
Yeah, to answer that question there, yeah, it seemed like where there's water, that's where you'll find bald eagles. Uh, but I see them out where I live on the plains. I'll see them. I'll drive them around. I'll see them, and usually I won't see golden eagles till springtime because they migrate up north into Canada, and then they'll come down and well, actually and then they'll come down. They'll usually come down in winter time, actually, and then in the summer, towards the summer, they'll migrate up into Canada and Alaska, and they follow the jet streams, and that's how they can fly that far. And I forgot the second part of that other question. What was
The second
could
question
you
that
restate
was
the second?
yeah. The question was, do both golden eagles and bald eagles have the same significance in the cultures of the Oceti Sakowin?
Yeah, some value the bald eagle and some value the golden eagle, and it's kind of I guess where you're from. Really, people more in Minnesota and that way they value the bald eagle, and on the plains it's the golden eagle. Everybody wants a black and whites, but they're actually all the same. I had one thing that I was thinking, and and came up to me afterwards. I'm sure later I'll think of all kinds of things. When I was young and I used to travel with my grandpa, if they saw an eagle, they would put a hand on their head, and the other hand, the palm, they would point it towards the eagle, and they would pray and ask for a blessing from that eagle. Because, when you're born, you have an opening in the top of your head. In the palms of our hands, there's openings as well, spiritual openings. So by putting a hand here and putting a hand upward towards the eagle, you're asking for a blessing to come through here. So I just share that one of the things they used to do, and they used to said if not anybody could just kill an eagle. If you took an eagle's life, you had to cry like you lost a relative. You had to cry for that eagle. So we didn't go out and just take an eagle's life. We would trap them and then pull some feathers and then let them go. And the highest value feather was from a live eagle. But they said to cry and mourn like you lost a relative when the eagle died.
We'll be down for sharing that. I know that my grandparents also do something similar too. But we do have one question remaining, which is I'm not sure but the question is what dialect is Sakata, as in the lake and state park? The person said that they were told that it means singing hills, but was not sure how that translated.
You an answer or
I was thinking about that. I don't actually know. Because to me, hill is why am I blanking? Uh like Paha
yeah.
or over in, I mean, it technically means mountain, but over in Siston we have a district called Heipa, which is Mountain Head. So to me, when I read Sakata, I would read it like you, Tierra, like kata is hot, sa, unless it means sha. I don't know. I don't really know where that comes from. It doesn't make sense in my head, but what do I know?
Yeah, that'd be a good question maybe for we'll have to figure that one out off the webinar. But thank you for that question. That's a good question.
Some of these our language is misspelled and
hmm
mispronounced, especially by the colonists, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
hmm
Yes. Well, that's all the questions we have time for tonight, but thank you to those who asked us those questions. We're now going to be doing our survey for your feedback on tonight's webinar. So thank you all for listening and participating. We will definitely have a follow-up email that goes out with the recording that you can rewatch if you'd like. You can see all of our other gifts of webinars as well on our YouTube channel. Thank you again, Summer and Jim, for your time and knowledge that you shared and spent with us tonight. For the participants, again, we have our survey and we have raffle items. Summer and Jim, technically you can fill out the survey too. You participated and listened to each other. While Tierra's getting that queued up, I also wanted to put that in the chat. Let me make sure it's in the chat. Okay, you did. Okay, great. Thanks, Tierra. So the 3 items we'll be raffling off this evening. We have these fine art prints that have Dakota language on the back of each of these different birds, including the ƞkasań. Those photos were all taken by one of our partners at Urban Bird Collective, Monica. She also donated a greeting card, a really beautiful greeting card that we'll be raffling. And then finally, that eagle graphic that you've seen on our flyer and tonight's presentation, that was designed by Nicole Walker. She has a website if you're interested. She has wonderful stickers and keychains and all sorts of things. So we'll be ordering some stickers for our 3rd raffle winner. So those are our raffle items. So for those of you, take a couple, I don't know, a minute here to fill out the survey, please. And then I will turn it back over to Tierra. Again, miigwech and wopida for joining us this evening and spending time here. And take care, Doksha. Over to you, Tierra.
Doksha.
Thank you.